Hey, good Wednesday morning, everybody. BAM weather meteorologist Brett Waltz here, giving you a long-range forecast update. And guys, I wanted to make the focus here to start off the video with the severe weather potential across parts of the Mississippi Valley, the Deep South, into parts of the Tennessee Valley. As we work into this afternoon and this evening, it looks like it's going to be a very dangerous day in these areas from Arkansas to Mississippi, parts of Louisiana, Alabama, and even portions of southwestern Tennessee. Again, this afternoon and this evening and into the overnight hours. That's a concern because once we get into the overnight hours, we start to get dark. These storms become even more dangerous. People start going to sleep. Be sure if you are in these areas, if you have the Weather Porthole app, to have your notifications on today. Location-specific severe weather alerts. You're going to get those alerts if it is for your location. We're not going to send out any false alarms. I know some of these counties down here are pretty big. We are only going to send you a severe weather alert if it is for your exact location. That way there's no false alarms, and that way you know if you get an alert, you are in the line of fire. So again, be sure to have those notifications on if you are in those areas this afternoon, this evening, and into tonight. You can see already across portions of northeastern Texas, northwestern Louisiana, we have severe thunderstorm warnings in effect. Not only are tornadoes going to be an issue today, but with some of these more linear lines of storms, we're going to see the risk of hail as well as severe winds. Frequent lightning, that's also going to be an issue. You can already see that in central portions of Missouri right now with some heavier rainfall that's ongoing in those areas. So again, a very busy day. I wanted to show you our official custom drawn maps. I know the SPC has issued a high risk. We kept it a moderate for now, but we did introduce an hatched area for an enhanced threat of tornadoes across portions of central and northern Mississippi, western parts of Alabama, including the Tuscaloosa area, and then into southwestern parts of Tennessee and eastern parts of Arkansas. Again, we didn't go high risk. The main reason for that is because of the widespread nature of the convection, but we're going to be keeping a very close eye on it as we work into this afternoon and this evening and update if needed. We're going to be keeping an eye on clients in these areas, and we'll let you know if anything changes with that potential severe weather threat. But again, I think the issue is, as far as a moderate versus a high risk, is that we're going to have a good amount of cloud cover. There's going to be a lot of convection that can sometimes minimize the discrete nature of the supercells, but the latest trends in the models are trying to indicate that it's the supercells could be a little bit more discrete rather than kind of linear or more in a multi-cell fashion. So that's something we are keeping an eye on into tomorrow as well. Across southeastern parts of the United States, we have another moderate risk. Another day with tornadoes, I think, is going to be on the table in parts of southeastern Georgia, South Carolina, into parts of North Carolina. As we work into tomorrow, you can see wind and hail once again will be a threat all the way up to portions of southern Ohio, southeastern Kentucky, West Virginia, and into parts of northern Florida. We're also going to have, with this upper level low, some excessive rainfall. We've introduced slight and moderate risk for excessive rainfall for parts of northern Missouri. You can see that ongoing right now pretty clearly on the radar that we just showed. And then I do think that there could be some heavier cells and some training of storms across parts of northern and central Alabama. So an excessive rainfall risk in that area as well for today. I do want to show you a brief look at how the radar looks to evolve. This is the latest HRRR model. As we work throughout the rest of the day, you can see that as we work into the early to mid-afternoon hours, the initial cells are going to try to develop across Mississippi and Alabama. Certainly as we work into the late afternoon and early evening hours, some of these will have the capability, perhaps many of these, the capability of producing large hail, wind, and yes, perhaps tornado actually being the highest threat. And I do think that there's a secondary area in southwestern portions of Tennessee, northern Mississippi, that we had in that hatched risk that needs to be kept an eye on. It's a little bit closer to the low. It's a little bit closer to the warm front. Sometimes data will underdo the tornadic potential in those areas. When you get that southeast surface wind, it is concerning, so I certainly keep an eye out in those areas as well. You can see as we work closer to the midnight hours, the line of storms starts to congeal. We get more of this linear nature. Our severe wind potential will begin to pick up with this across portions of central and eastern Alabama, with some heavy rainfall likely as well. And then again, as we work into tomorrow, we'll have to keep an eye on parts of Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina for an additional severe weather risk. That is that. As far as the short term, I know that's a lot of information in a short amount of time. I do want to go into some of the long-range details, but I don't have much in the way of changes from our thoughts yesterday. A couple of things that I wanted to note, and I know that we've touched on this both of the first 2 days of this week, but the very strong positive NAO, you can see that building in the 5 to 10 day period. You can see the greens indicating much below normal heights across the Arctic and Greenland. Again, that's exacerbating the strong ridge of high pressure across the northeastern United States, leading to a big drop in heating demand and much above normal temperatures, again, building in that 5 to 10 day period. A big drop in heating demand, again, expected because the warmest temperatures compared to what we've kind of been dealing with to start the month, being more in the northern plains, will start to shift more into the Great Lakes and into the Northeast, and that's just going to allow those HDDs to get even lower as we work into this time frame. Now, I do want to note that in the 10 to 15 day period, we have a stronger cold front that we've been targeting with a drop in the SOI. But a couple of things I want to note. You can see the little trough that the EPS model here is trying to suggest. That's the storm system. Two things I want to note, though. Our EPO, you can see the big trough just north of Alaska there and into the Arctic. That still, to me, indicates that we are going to flood the U.S. with mild air. I still think that the northern tier of the U.S. can stay warmer given this setup. I do think that as we start to get more low pressure into the Northeast, that our NAO is going to weaken a little bit. That's probably going to allow our ridge in the east to weaken just a touch. Probably allow for some of our precipitation risk to come further east. I think in the 5 to 10 day period, it's more in the plains. I think that as we work into the 10 to 15 day, it's probably going to be more like the eastern ag belt, the Ohio Valley, the Mississippi Valley, and perhaps into parts of the eastern United States. I would watch, though, perhaps the first week of April, if there's a risk to the warmer forecast, as we get more low pressure into the Northeast, there's a risk that the NAO could trend a little bit more negative for a time. If you recall our weeks 3 and 4 outlook, I think that the warmest temperatures as we work into early April end up across the north central U.S. We'll have to watch that cold front. I'm seeing some tendencies that we need to keep an eye on. There's some tendencies of weaker winds working into the higher latitudes. If that continues, it's not a strong signal yet, but if that signal grows, it would increase the risk that maybe this period isn't quite as widespread with the warmth. I still think that it probably averages out warmer than normal into the first week of April, but it's a risk that we need to watch, that maybe we're not seeing the extreme above normal temperatures like we will in the 5 to 10 day period, and for it to be centered a little bit more west. Think about how our week 1 forecast looked on Monday. It would be a little bit more moderated rather than widespread with the well above normal temperatures. That's a risk. It's something that I want to at least keep in mind for the first week of April. Here's a look at our pattern drivers as we close out the month of March. You can see that the vast majority of these are on the warmer side. The AAM is now consistently negative, finally, later than what we had expected, but it's now finally consistently negative. That favors warmer risk, and it does favor a more active pattern. Need to keep that in mind as well. You can see some of the other warm drivers, the SOI, the East Asia rule, the big ridge in East Asia, and then of course the warm Pacific jet signal, overall favoring a warmer pattern to close out the month of March. And you can see that here on our forecast the next 2 weeks. The week 1 period starting to warm up. Initially, the warmest air will develop in the northern plains to Great Lakes, shifting off to the east late week 1 and into the week 2 time frame, with the warmest temperatures 8 to 12 degrees above normal in week 2 likely to be across the Great Lakes and the northeast U.S. Upper level low risk will continue across the southwestern U.S. and into parts of the southern and central plains. That's going to keep those areas a little bit cooler. You can see that on our week 2 map. That's also going to allow for the pattern, as we mentioned before, to stay a little bit more active. You can see the week 1 period. You can see all the wetter risk across the plains. Again, 5 to 10 day period, I think the wettest risks are in the plains. I don't think that it goes as far east because of the strength of the eastern U.S. ridge, but as that weakens a touch later in week 2, I think that your better precipitation risk will be from the Ohio Valley into the southern and central plains, and then across parts of the deep south and the Mississippi Valley. Maybe some drier risk, once again, up to the north across parts of North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota. Something I want to note up there, especially parts of western, North, and South Dakota. Those are the areas that have struggled to get the moisture, and I think that that risk can continue at least through the end of the month, if not longer. Guys, before we go, I want to go into the extended range a little bit more, some of our seasonal data that we're looking at in analogs. And the big thing that I want to note here, guys, take a look at how cold the water off of Western North America has become. In fact, this is the coldest that these waters have been since early 2013, and we're perhaps looking, if we drop once again into for March as a whole, and I think that does happen, probably the coldest these waters have been since 2012. That has big implications on the jet stream, both for spring and especially into summer. We talked about this yesterday. It's a wetter risk for March. Certainly that is panning out. Into April, as the jet stream starts to shift a little bit off to the north, the wetter risk can be more across the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes. Maybe some drier risks start building across the southeastern and eastern U.S. Into May, this is where things really start to change. You can see that into May, this would suggest that the pattern could favor a more widespread drier risk across the central and western U.S. And then I know that we showed this in our summer webinar here. This is the negative PMM correlation, those cold waters off the western coast of North America as we work into June, July, and August. And you can see the more widespread nature of the drier risk for the ag belt if this continues to pan out as it's going. And I don't see a big reason why it would change right now. Also, guys, it's a big warmer risk as well. It's not just dry. It would be a warm and dry pattern with that correlation. Obviously, that's just one thing, but it does have a big impact on the subtropical jet. That is going to be a key to watch here over the next couple of months. Guys, that's all I have for today's forecast. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out, guys. Stay safe if you're across the deep south of Mississippi Valley today, and have a great rest of your Wednesday.